you must be wondering how exactly the type of breathing affects the cycle of stress. So your lungs are wrapped around by a very thin layer, which is known as the visceral pleura. And surrounding the ribcage is another sheath, which is known as the parietal pleural sheath. Between these two sheaths, there is a very small vacuum-like space. It is filled by some fluid. Now, when you are in the sitting position, because of gravity, all the fluid is mostly in the downward direction. So the lung tissue of the upper lobes is mostly inflated, which means there is less capacity for your upper lobes to fill in extra air, which means to get the same amount of oxygen, you have to breathe more rapidly if you're breathing with your chest. Now, if you're consciously breathing with your diaphragm, the lower lobes are more active. Along with that, there is more blood supply in the lower lobes. Again, because of gravity. And second is intrapleural fluid between the spaces, the lower lobes. What happens is the lung tissue is not as inflated as the upper lobes. So, which means more air can be accommodated if you consciously breathe using the diaphragm. Of course, the oxygen exchange would be higher, which means to deliver the same amount of oxygen to the rest of your body, the rate of breathing decreases. When your rate of breathing decreases, the biofeedback mechanism lets your brain know that you are safe, that there is no external threat involved in the moment, which further lets your sympathetic system to calm down, and your parasympathetic system, which is responsible for calming you down, becomes activated, which slows down your thinking process and further reduces your stress hormone levels. If the lungs are more active or the rate of breathing is much higher, it automatically tells your brain that you need to activate the sympathetic system, which leads to an aroused state. Now, some of us might be thinking that, okay, this is probably just for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but the reason for my stress and anxiety and other things, they're actually lying deep within. So what happens is when you practice it on a daily basis, now let's go back to psychoanalytic theory. Over the time, whatever emotions that are being held in your lower centers gets on the surface of your consciousness. At least that is what yoga says. When a lot of shame, guilt, resentment, these three, and fear is the greatest enemy of life. These three, when they're mostly stuck in the lower centers and your heart center. When these three start coming on the surface, it becomes uncomfortable. But over the time, when you start releasing them, you become a much calmer person. Or at least you learn how to cope with these emotions much efficiently. So just by changing our breathing pattern, we can build up our resilience, we can reduce our stress. That is why pranayama in yoga is given so much importance. It completely changes your state of mind in the moment and in the long run. Maybe at the end of the day, ask yourself, to what extent was I conscious with respect to my breathing? Did I allow myself to not worry about how I look in order to breathe through the belly? This is a therapeutic modality, proven by science, comes from yoga. Let's try and apply it in our daily lives. For this reason, studying the interrelationship between emotions, breath, and the autonomic nervous system includes your sympathetic and parasympathetic, could potentially yield valuable insights into the prevention and treatment of numerous diseases. So, with that, that's all for today. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and do take a look at these topics and have a great day. Bye.